Alright, this is some footage that I took testing the T30 Spotlight in the field while I was on a trip to Mexico. I'm actually going to be looking for primarily coyotes, but you'll see that I do get some deer in the spotlight a couple of times. You'll actually see me fumble around a few times to get my kind of sequence right. I'm going to do some more testing on this. I think in some cases, a side-by-side, which I generally don't use, might actually come in handy. More so if the target is moving. If the target is static, there's really no need for the side-by-side. In this case, it might have helped. Say that you could use the thermal to track the subject, and of course, then the light's going to be kind of trained to the crosshairs. So I'm just, you can see that subject ran off. I believe it turned out to be a deer. I'm actually trying to get something out in the field, so it's just a little easier to do kind of a test of altitude. Right now I'm at 217 feet. Now, what you'll see here, I don't realize that I'm not above that 7.0 transition in my zoom. And you gotta be, so that's gonna be the trick, is for this light, in the real world, you gotta be over the 7.0 zoom. You gotta be at a height that's, somewhere in the, ideally 200 to 150. And I think for a moving target, if you were to be tracking someone, a bad guy that was running and you were trying to assist, then you'd want to be up high. And honestly, as long as you're tracking him on thermal, that's what the big thing. Trying to track him with this light would be a little difficult at those altitudes unless he was wearing a reflective vest or something. So I'm just looking for other subjects. So for my business, primarily, I'm doing deer recovery and any of my property, like wildlife surveys or whatever, counting deer. I'm going to be doing those during the daylight. I don't really think those are going to be effective or efficient at night. I'm not going to have as good of confidence in calling a buck versus a doe, especially if your bucks have already dropped and you're looking for the pedicles on their head. Maybe with big old antlers it'd be easy, but I mean, with this light, I don't know that you're going to be able to tell a spike from a doe. So for deer recovery, you're talking about a stationary animal or wounded animal. And so you need to be able to see just enough. And if that animal is stationary, you're going to be able to descend and get to a more reasonable height. And you can see that was obviously a deer. So as long as you can keep the deer in frame, or the subject, as long as you can be above 7.0 on your magnification and your subject sits still, right? And in my thought is for deer recovery or search and rescue, your subject is generally going to be sitting still, and you're going to be able to get closer and closer until you've got, you can be able to address the situation, or kind of decide whether the deer has expired, or whether, the condition of the search and rescue subject. So I'm just looking for some other subjects to test on. I think when you get down into the 100, 150 range, it is a lot of light. It's just around that 200 to 250, the camera struggles a little bit to give you a good picture. And of course, like I said, you got to get that 7.0 zoom 7 plus, or that camera just, I thought when I was making this originally and I was looking at this, I was struggling to get it. And I was like, why won't this camera focus? And of course, it's just what we're all used to. Just got to be 7.0 plus. So here you see I've located a couple of animals. Turns out to be a couple of deer. So you can see there I got lined up at the thermal, switched to zoom, zoomed in plus, over the 7.0 transition, flipped on the light, and the deer center frame, or mostly. Also, one thing to note, you can look at your wind direction. In this case, it was very calm on the ground, but there was some 10 to 15 miles per hour of wind at, 150, 250 feet. If you want to, when you flip the light on, if you want to have more of the light centered, you need to line your wind direction up with your drone direction, and that's going to keep at least left to right your because you got to think right now the drone is leaning into the wind, right? So of course the light is only the light is going to shine more to the left because the drone is leaning into the wind to the right. So you just got to take that into account, so that you can try to keep your subject at least centered. I did not make any adjustments on this one. So up and down, I could probably get maybe a little improvement. I'm going to play with that next and see. What I need is some static subjects. I wanted y'all to see what wildlife and deer look like on the camera, or with the light. But next, I'm going to actually do some testing with some static objects. It may be wildlife, cows, and it may be just an object the size of a deer. Just want to show you what it looks like at the various heights, and also maybe try to optimize the light angle for the pitch, and see if we can try to come up with how best to use it in the field to speed up the process. Again, I think the performance is adequate for what we're doing with it. Obviously, if you went with the Matrice 30T, that has a higher payload capacity, so that light's going to be bigger, higher powered, and you're going to get a little more performance, obviously, than what you can fit on the Mavic 3T. One of the things I would have liked to have seen when I first started looking for a spotlight, and this is you can see I find a raccoon here. He seems alarmed, and you can see he's either chasing something or running from my light. I'm not sure. But one of the things I looked at when I first started looking at spotlights was the potential for something that weighed as much as this spotlight, but was static, right? So it pointed in the same direction every time, and it was higher powered, and it had PSDK control. So I wanted something that was either had its own power supply, and then was controlled on and off with the PSDK control, or controlled by the drone battery, or controlled by the PSDK, uses the drone battery, and is higher powered but static. So you save weight on your controls, on your motion controls, but you gain power, right? By using a bigger, better lighting module. And no one's doing that. The only other ones that I found were just completely static. Literally, you turn them on before you launch the drone, and it has its own battery, and that's just, not going to be strong enough, not going to be high-powered enough. And I don't want to fly around with a light on the whole time. I want the ability to be incognito and stealthy, and obviously save that battery for when it's needed. So PSDK is a must. But everybody wants these lights to follow the gimbal, but I would give up some of that control. And in this case, with my idea, you would have the light be a static angle, and you would basically just have to set it at such an angle that you would adjust the gimbal to align with the light. And obviously, if there's more or less wind, you'd have to move the gimbal a little less or more. But again, the thought of that was only to potentially gain lighting power, right, for the same amount of mass and payload mass. So I'm just looking for a few more subjects to put under it. I think these guys run off before I even get situated on them. That's one thing. I think you can sneak up on wildlife during the daytime more than you can at night, and only because they expect it to be calm at night, and the drone does have lights, and they may even see that. Now I stop, and I'm at 150 feet, but I'm also at a 35-degree gimbal angle, I think, in this case. So I'm a ways away from these deer at a 35-degree gimbal angle. I really should have been closer. But you can see, it does do the job. There is still some, the drone doesn't want to focus, and the camera doesn't want to focus, especially that far. The light is casting quite a ways. I don't know the exact distance, but and when we watch, drone deer recovery, and he's using the M30T, I tried to, in the the usage I've done, I didn't necessarily get video of it previously when I've used it. But trying to test and compare to his altitudes, you can see I'm a ways up. I think I'm gonna come down here maybe. Or not. But drone deer recovery, when he's doing his testing, he is, or when he's doing his usage, he's usually somewhere between 150 and 220 in most of the videos that I have watched. So, and again, because it's a larger drone, larger payload, that light's putting out, more lumens, if you will, than this one. But so now I'm going to light up the myself in the car, and you kind of get an idea. You can see it is pretty dark out there. So, see, there's some weird vibration too, if you notice that. I'm not sure what that is, but it obviously a low light issue, and it may be because the light is flickering. I'm not sure if it's the focus or the fact that the light's moving, but clearly a low light issue. Now I think right here I'm going to actually spin the drone around. I overshoot, but I'm trying to line the drone orientation heading with the wind direction, and you'll see I start to do that here in a second. So you can see right now the wind is coming from the left, so the drone will be leaning to the left, and the light would then be casting more to the right. So I'm spinning, so you can see right here I overshoot. But your wind heading arrow is also, it's an approximate. It's jumping quite big gaps. You can see it just for a second there went back to where it was pointing straight down. So now my lighting's a little more centered, where I am centered more in the actual light. And you can see, I mean, that looks decent. 200. It almost looks brighter in the widescreen or the wide angle. And technically, if you're at 200 feet, you could potentially do side by side with the wide and follow a subject. But of course, with the zoom, if you want to get an actual picture, you got to be over that 7.0 transition, and you're going to just be too close to be able to follow something that's moving. So, like I said, I'm going to be doing some more testing. This was just the first time I took it out in a little while, and I know I've had a couple of comments on videos asking about this, and there are some other videos about this light, but I wanted to give you some looking at wildlife at reasonable altitudes and whatnot, and you can make the conclusion for yourself. But I will follow this up with a little more static, systematic test method at various altitudes, and looking at the same subject each time, and we'll see what else we can learn. So anyway, I hope this was helpful for you in making your decision.